Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Sheltered Sages, the podcast where two formerly previous sheltered homeschoolers, now adults, take a fresh look at the complexities of life, one messy Reddit story at a time. I'm Andrew.
I am Philip.
Yes, we got it. One of these days we're going to be able to do it like super easy.
Yeah, it's like what, the 5th episode now?
Yeah, we'll get it eventually.
Yeah,
I'm sure
it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
We got this.
So each week we kind of read different Reddit stories from all over the internet and just kind of share our sage advice from that perspective of being a sheltered homeschooler. So
absolutely.
I'm enjoying it so far. This has been a lot of fun.
It's really fun. And once again, if you are, if this is your first episode that you've listened to, welcome.
Yes.
If this is not your first episode, welcome back. We enjoy talking about these stories and kind of figuring out who's the picklefoot in various different situations, and also talking about like fun stuff. I think the last episode, if you've listened to the last episode, was about more geeky type stuff. We talked about Dungeons and Dragons.
Every 4 episodes we do a deep geek dive into kind of our more unique interests.
So. If you haven't heard that one yet, probably go back and listen to it, because I think it's really interesting. If you like tabletop gaming or video games or just storytelling in general, that's a really fun episode. Yeah. So listen to that one and then come back to this one, because this is going to be interesting as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Or just listen to that one after you've listened to this one. That's also an option.
You could do that too. Yeah.
You could just be one of those people that plays from the most current episode and then listens backwards.
Oh my goodness.
Those people exist. It's wild.
I'm not going to say they're the picklefoot in that situation, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I wonder where their thought process is for that.
Yeah.
What's going on in your head?
Yeah, if you're one of those people, send us a comment and let us know why you do it that way.
Yes, we'd love to learn, because maybe this is something, maybe that's a school thing that we don't know about because we, only went to college. Maybe it's a high school thing.
I don't know.
But anyways.
Yeah.
So the theme for this episode, because we're trying to now that we have done the general, we're starting to break into different themes of different shows and things like that. Or not shows, different episodes. We're going to be breaking into different themes, and the theme for this episode is siblings.
Oh
yes. So how many siblings do you have?
I have 4 siblings.
4? I thought you only had 3. I don't know why I was thinking you only had 3.
I've got 4 of them. Okay. They're all various different places, all various different ages. I love them dearly. They do. When we were growing up, they were a little annoying at times. I was annoying as well. I had to apologize to all of them recently, going But siblings are complicated. Yeah. You have people that live with you that know you better than really anyone else. And as a homeschooler, they're your classmates.
Yeah, that's the added part.
Yeah, every single time you go up a grade, they go up a grade as well. You're in the same room with them most of the time. You're going to the same locations with them. Your teacher is the same person. Even at times, just to make it easier, my mom would kind of have us all read the same books at the same time, so she didn't have to worry about it. So instead of us being separated out by age, sometimes she would group us in 2s because we were kind of close in age in that way. Very, very smart. But also it's these are the people that you experience life with from basically as soon as you were born all the way up until you graduated from high school.
Yeah, it's an experience, to say the least.
Yes. How many siblings do you have?
I have 3. Not to start off on a sour note, but I currently have 2. I had 3. Older brother passed away a couple years ago from complications with his muscular dystrophy. So don't want to. It's not sad. We're not going to start sad, but also just, to understand a little bit more about myself.
Absolutely.
But he lived an amazing life and was a really fun person most of the time. Other times he was quite it's one of my favorite people when we were talking around the time. They were like, it's important to remember that he could be difficult. And it was just they were saying this at a remembrance where we were having with the youth, and it was great because I was just thank you for saying that, because sometimes when someone passes away, you just want to talk about all the fun stuff and the good memories, and and she was just really great for setting that message home. I was just he could be a lot. He could be I don't remember the exact words she said, but it was great. It was one of those moments we all laughed and we all needed it.
Yeah.
But anyways, so I grew up with 3 siblings.
Okay.
One older than me and then 2 younger than me. So 2 brothers and a sister. My poor sister. Similar concept actually that you went through, where it was like I would be kind of grouped up with my older brother quite a lot for projects, and my younger sister and brother would kind of be grouped up if there were dual things. But my mom was actually like went to school for teaching and things like that, so she did have the capabilities of teaching us up till we were about, I think I was in 7th or 8th grade when she started using outside resources to start trying to do school for us.
Yeah. My mom did a similar thing on for us as well.
Yeah. As non-homeschooled people, you got a break from your siblings unless you were like a twin for a couple hours, for several hours throughout the day. We never got that.
Nope.
Never.
They're always there.
They were always there.
Always.
And
it's funny now looking back on it. It's like, yes, they were always there. They were always around. And then you grow older and you're like, wow, I haven't seen them in a good bit of time. You know?
It must be nice. Love you guys.
I love all my siblings as well. Miss you guys. You guys are great. If you're listening to this episode, still love you. We should talk.
Mine live about 45 minutes away. They both currently live with my parents, so I see them quite frequently.
That's wonderful.
And no, it's good. We went through a rough patch where it's like, I feel like all siblings go through this though. And I might be wrong, and you might be like hunky-dory with your family the entire time. But like me and my siblings, we would go through like, I was good friends with one of them, furious with another one, and then it would flip-flop, or I was good friends with the other one, furious at that one I was really good friends with. I just feel like it's like you go through so many phases.
Yeah. Family is complicated, and you know they have their ups and downs. I will say, out of everyone in the entire world, my family is the most important to me, including my wife, just because of what they mean to me and things like that.
Absolutely.
But yes, they also at times have brought me to the most frustrated that I have probably ever been.
It's almost like
anyone.
When you spend an extended amount of time with someone, you get the good, the bad, and the really, really ugly.
Absolutely.
So I just want to make sure that like when your wife listens, you were making it clear that she was part of your family, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to make sure you made that clarification.
Wife first, as always.
Good,
and
as it
then
should be.
the rest of the family that's there. Just that clarification. Thank you so much
Absolutely.
for that. Yes.
I've got your back.
And my back as well. Thank you.
Your back, absolutely. Well, on the subject of deceased siblings, I have our first story for us.
Okay, here we go.
That was not intentional, I promise. I just realized I pulled up my stories and I was like, oh, that's right. That was the first story I had for this one. So are you ready?
Before we hop into that story, we generally get stories from various subreddits out there. There is one subreddit that is called Am I the Blank Hole that is there. We don't really like to say that word often here just because we're a little more family friendly. So we try to say, am I the picklefoot instead? It's kind of a more friendly way of saying it. And if you haven't heard the first episode, maybe go back and hear why we called Am I the Picklefoot?
It's a good homeschool insult regardless.
It absolutely is. Also, I do not know the stories that Andrew is going to read to me, nor he knows the stories that I'm going to read to him. So this is going to be the first time I experience it. We'll see how it goes.
All right. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. Am I the picklefoot for following my late sister's wishes and kicking our brother out of her funeral? Yeah, we're starting heavy.
Wow.
I saw this one. Yeah.
I needed more information.
You need more context,
yeah,
right?
I need more context.
Because I was really worried if you're going to make a presupposition about that.
No, I can't.
All right. Well, let's get started. My sister passed away recently after a long illness, and before she died, she made a very clear instruction regarding her funeral. She specifically did not want our brother, John, to attend or receive any of her ashes. To provide some context, growing up, my sister was not kind to John. John also was not great. This has been bolded. They fought like cats and dogs. As an adult, she sought therapy, recognized the damage she had done, and tried to make amends. She apologized multiple times and reached out, but John refused to reconcile. He was clear that he did not want a relationship with her. When she became ill, my sister made one last attempt to reconnect, asking John to visit her. He declined again, stating that he had no interest in repairing the relationship, even as she was dying. This hurt her, and she made it clear that if he didn't want to see her while she was alive, that she didn't want him at her funeral. or receiving any part of her remains. In her view, if he couldn't show up for her in life, he had no right to be there in death. John showed up at the funeral uninvited. In line with my sister's wishes, I asked him to leave. He became angry, caused a scene, and accused me of being cruel and preventing him from saying goodbye. Several family members have since criticized my decision, saying I should have let him stay for closure, saying that funerals are for the living, but I pointed out that this was her last wish. He thinks I'm a huge jerk, and I am refusing to give him anything of hers still. The family is mostly split, so I need an outside opinion. Am I the picklefoot?
That's complicated.
I know.
And kind of heavy.
Yeah. Sorry, everyone, but also kind of a good segue.
It is. It's a great segue into there. Speaking on that, what one note that they had in the story where they're like, funerals are for the living. Mm-hmm. I do relatively agree with that. Mm-hmm. It's like, without going too much into religion or the situation surrounding it, the person that has passed away is generally, I'd say, in most people's mindsets, is gone. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be experiencing that, or really, even if they do, I don't think that they would have as many choices about what's going on or things. So respecting someone's wishes is important. Mm-hmm. And I think as a promise to them, keeping that promise is still important. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's more for that person anymore. It's for you to show that you have respected that person even after their death. Yeah. It's kind of like, until death do you part with marriage. Mm-hmm. Like you literally said, I will follow you until you pass away. But then afterwards, that kind of marriage is over and you can go over. You should still respect them beyond that, but that is the agreement that you've made.
Yeah, so it's very interesting because I have I've had a lot of funerals that I've attended over the years.
Yeah.
And one of the most recent ones was the passing of my grandmother, who I was very, very close with. She had very late stage cancer and was like in the process of going for a long time.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because I saw someone who was actively planning their funeral, to the point where it was like, this is what I want to see here. This is what I want to see there. These are all these things.
Yeah.
And it was a lot. It was very emotionally draining. It was exhausting. And I think it did get to a point where we were just like, we're going to do the best that we can to honor her wishes, but recognizing that at the end of the day, this is the funeral for her family. And we're going to do what we can, but we cannot make it something that she's going to be able to attend.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's just one of those things that I think about that goes in line with that, is it's like, a funeral is not for you to fully plan out. It's not your wedding in that regard. It is something that other people put on for you and in remembrance of you.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, if there's other thoughts that you have, it's one of those things I wanted to touch on.
Yeah. With siblings and frustrations, as I said, out of everyone in the entire world, probably my siblings have brought me to more frustration, like a point of more frustration than I think anyone else has. Mm-hmm. Not because I don't like them, but because I love them so much and they know me so well that they know how to get under my skin, and they know
it's
just
an
that
art.
Little thing to say, to get there. So with they're fighting back and forth, and then even after that sibling has passed, it's still frustrating. I personally, and it's okay if people don't agree with me in that way, I personally feel that beyond anything, even if that sibling had complications or there was something that was happening there, kind of like you were saying before, it's okay to note those complications. It's okay to go, they may not have been perfect, because no one's absolutely perfect. Mm-hmm. Some people are very difficult, but also allowing your family to kind of come together in a very stressful ending of that situation. Because once again, that funeral is for the living, not necessarily for the dead that's there. Now, I don't know what the brother specifically did or how that relationship kind of went. Sometimes it is a very toxic situation when those people show up, and it's like beyond, even after that person has passed, you still don't want them around the rest of the family, or they might say some things or do some things that are not proper. So I don't want to talk about that in that way. But also it's like, the sister, as sad as it is, she's gone. Mm-hmm. if you still talk to your brother and you're still around your brother and you still care about your brother, I still think while you should try to respect your sister's wishes, maybe don't give him the ashes or anything like that. But if he wants to sit in the back, I'm not going to be against that. Like me personally, I'd be like, hey, she didn't really want you here, but as long as you don't make a fuss and you're respectful, if you want to just exist in this area as this thing is happening, because like you don't have multiple funerals. Hopefully that's it.
Yeah.
That's the one time.
Yeah. And so in your idea, she is kind of being the picklefoot?
A little bit,
okay.
Yeah.
I think this might be the first episode that we like directly disagree.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So as someone who has lost a sibling,
Yeah.
The thing that really sticks out to me is that this desire to amend that the sister had.
Yeah.
The sister who passed. She went to therapy. She recognized the faults that she had and has reached out multiple times to amend those. And even when she was sick and like, this is my last chance.
Yeah.
I want us to fix our relationship. And he said no.
Yeah.
That is incredibly disrespectful and hurtful to that person.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, if you're going to be that selfish that you're not going to allow your dying sibling to have that conversation with you and make those amends, it's hard because there's like a spiritual side of it that like I'm struggling with, because like as a Christian, and I'm not going to get too much into religion, but as a Christian, I would allow it to happen. But I also understand this desire to, if you're not going to show me the respect that I've been trying to extend to you, why should I extend the same respect to allow you to come to my funeral and to be able to partake in that?
Yeah, I respect it. Yeah.
And so that's where I kind of sit on my end. I'm very much feeling of the mindset of like, she's not the picklefoot, because it's like, this is your sister who I'm guessing she has been alongside her and seeing all of this bad stuff happening.
Yeah.
And she's been there. And the last thing that her sister asked her is, hey, if he doesn't want to be a part of this, I don't want him there.
Yeah.
And so a little bit more of a deep dive into like my life and things like that. Oh, I didn't think this was going to be the talk about my sibling's funeral episode, but it is.
Oh, no.
So like me and my sister, we have a great relationship now. We're doing really, really good. But at the time when my brother passed, we were not really on speaking terms. There were a lot of things that we both had kind of done wrong. There was a lot of mental health stuff going on. I had said some really awful things to her. She had said some really awful things to me. She was living with a boyfriend I really didn't like. A lot of things like that had happened. And so when his funeral came around, there was a very selfish part of me that didn't want her there. Very selfish part of me. I don't know if I told her this, so I hope this isn't you finding out. But there was a very selfish
really
part
good
of
friends
me.
now. They're closer. They've worked through a lot of stuff. Yeah.
My brother wanted her there. And I knew this because this is something he had been trying to repair that relationship forever.
Yeah.
And so I knew at the end of the day, she needed to be there. And I needed to let go of my selfishness in order to let her be there. If she had actively been spitting in the face of his attempts to reconcile, which she was not.
Yeah.
She hadn't been doing that. If she had been doing that and said, I don't want to be a part of your life, I think it would be a very different story.
That's fair.
So my standing is not the picklefoot.
I mean, I completely respect that. It's
a hard issue.
Complicated. It's a hard issue because in my head too, it's a very final moment, right? And people don't really talk about it as much because there's a whole big stigma around, that kind of situation, funerals and stuff, especially when it wasn't on the greatest of terms. And so it's like, how do you deal with that finality? Some people are more on the side of, and my family was always like, family is family no matter what. I don't completely agree with that because I feel like in some ways family can hurt you more than anyone else can. And sometimes it's very toxic to have that viewpoint where you're like, okay, family can do whatever they want. That's not how that should work.
No.
And the other side though, too, it's it's where when your family hurts you deeply, when you have those issues that cannot be resolved easily, when there's that final moment happens, it's like, what's the best way to deal with it?
Yeah.
And you don't want to just be like, okay, let's rub it. Like, let's just throw it under the rug. Let's pretend like everything was fine. Like you were talking about before, where people are like, oh yeah, they were a wonderful person. They were absolutely perfect in every single way. Or yeah, they loved everyone. Everyone was friends with them.
They lit up a room when they walked in.
My father talks, he has said before, it is very complicated whenever you're doing a eulogy for a more complicated situation or a person. And it's almost more harmful when that person walks up and says all of these, I won't say lies, but things that aren't necessarily true.
Of the truth.
Yeah, very, very much stretching of the truth. Because everyone kind of understands that that's not really how it happened. If the brother had shown up and was in front of everyone, crying and being like, oh, I miss you so much, like I really wanted to be around, the people who truly knew that situation are probably been like, no, this is fake. We need to figure out something else. So
you're doing it to save face or something like that. It's one of those things where I'm just like, it's a very complicated situation.
Yeah.
And it's, again, I think it's one of those like honoring the dead and what they requested is a fair thing to use in that regard.
Absolutely. So. If she wants to do that, I'm not upset with her at all or saying that she's a picklefoot in that way. I would have probably chosen something differently, but also I have never been in that situation.
Yeah. As I said, very much part of me recognizes this I don't even say selfish. I think that was a very fair thing because she had been trying.
Yeah.
But like, I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Do we have any comments?
Sis, I love you. There are some comments. All right. So first one, someone asked some info. So they were like, hey, are you the legal executor of your sister's will/estate or otherwise formally connected to the end of life process? Did your sister inform any other close relatives of her wishes? R.E. John, either verbally or in writing. They also added that they don't think she's the picklefoot.
Okay.
The person responded. They're actually very responsive to a lot of the comments in this story. They said, yes, I informed them.
Okay.
So she is the executor of her sister's will.
That's fair.
And she informed the family and John that he was not invited prior to the funeral.
Okay.
Doesn't that? Yeah.
Yeah, that adds a lot more context to it. If they still showed up, no.
Yeah.
No.
I don't know why he attended if he didn't like her. This is another comment. Was he just there to cause one final scene? Not the picklefoot for refusing access to a private event for someone not invited.
Yeah.
The thing is, are funerals private events? That's another very interesting question because a lot of times funerals are listed in obituaries and things like that.
I think so.
The people who knew her are able to show up.
Yeah. I think if you want it to be a private event, there was a funeral that happened recently where they just wanted it to be a very quiet graveside type thing with very few people. And so, yeah, I think a funeral can be a private event. Okay. They don't owe you to be at their funeral, really. Yeah. And the family also, I think this is an important thing too. The family of a deceased individual doesn't owe you the time to go over and like grieve with them.
Yeah.
I think that's a complicated situation, but it's also, you need to acknowledge that everyone grieves in their own way. And especially the people that are closest to the person that passed should have the time and be allowed to like grieve in the way that they need to. I get frustrated often when people expect those individuals to like show up for them, or when they're like, hey, you need to be here for the people who knew this person at school, or you need to be here for this person's friends. It's like, you lost someone too.
Yeah.
You lost someone close to you. You're going through a lot of emotions right now. To expect you to have to like step up and be there for everyone else around you. Sure, if you wanted to do that, you can, but you shouldn't be expected to do that.
And I think it definitely comes down to the person's personality. Like if you're a more outgoing person, you're going to want to be around the people that are going to help recharge you. Right?
Yeah.
If you're like myself, who's more of that introverted person, I need the few close people that I want to be around. And then maybe I just need some alone time to be able to process my own thoughts, my own grief, things like that. So really heavy one. I'm sorry about that, really heavy for the beginning. They did reply to that second comment as well, being like, I don't know why he was there. He made it clear that he hates her until she was ash. That's what he said. Hates her until she is ash.
Wow.
I don't even believe he deserves to be at the funeral. He may be her brother, but he never acted like it. And so
that's fair.
Yeah, there's another one that's a little bit more, but basically just frustrated comments about how the brother found out, and recognizing that like the uncle who shared it with him didn't agree with the sister's wishes and did it behind the back of where the details of everything was.
Yeah.
And I don't like that either.
That's not cool.
No.
Yeah, absolutely not the picklefoot if you kick them out of that situation, especially after you told them respectfully that they're not allowed to be there and stuff like that. No.
Yeah. I wanted to get your full input before I read the comments, because I had a feeling it would change it. But anyway, so that heavy one out of the way.
Oh,
siblings.
All right.
Siblings, man.
Siblings are complicated.
There's a lot. I've got a variety of interesting stories, because there's siblings go all over the place.
I'm going to give a story to you. It's nowhere near as heavy, but it's more of a different aspect.
We need a good palate cleanser.
Absolutely. Let's go for something else. So this is Am I the Picklefoot for ruining my brother's childhood memory by admitting I photoshopped it 14 years ago?
I love this. This sounds fun. All right, let's get into it. Let's go.
All right. When my younger brother, 20 now, was 6, he went through a huge Harry Potter phase. He loved the wizarding world and believed he might meet Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe, or the other characters on a family trip to Scotland, since Hogwarts was, with quotation marks, there. A little aspect of it, as homeschool kids, we weren't allowed to watch Harry Potter.
Nope, not at all.
So that wouldn't have happened for us, but I think it's interesting that this child was able to do so. Probably not a homeschooler.
Probably not.
No one promised him this, but he convinced himself it could happen. Sadly, the trip was canceled after our grandpa passed away, and my brother was devastated for both reasons. So he was 6 years old when this happened.
Yeah, that's a lot for a 6-year-old.
A small child. To cheer him up, I decided to craft a souvenir. I was 16 and had just discovered Photoshop, so I edited a picture of my brother with Daniel Radcliffe to make it look like they'd met. I printed it, framed it, and gave it to him without telling him it was fake. He loved it and fully believed he'd met Daniel. Soon, he had an entire story about the meeting, what they talked about, how Daniel hugged him, etc. It was so sweet, and none of us, my family and I, had the heart to tell him the truth. Fast forward 14 years, and my brother still didn't know that the old, low-quality picture of him meeting Daniel Radcliffe is fake. I never told him because his memory of the fake meeting felt so real to him that it became one of his proudest stories. Over time, the memory became less important, and the framed picture he had been packed away in some box. And my brother has long outgrown his Harry Potter obsession.
How dare he? Just kidding.
Yesterday, however, we were at our parents' home and we were bringing up old memories. You know how it goes. The story of meeting Daniel Radcliffe came up, and thinking it was harmless, I told him the truth.
Oh no.
I thought he'd laugh, but instead he got visibly upset. He didn't want to believe me at first, thinking I was messing with him. I told him the real story of how and why I did it. He told me that it feels like I robbed him of a real childhood memory that he really cherished. And he feels embarrassed thinking about all the times he's told people about meeting Daniel Radcliffe in person. Even recently, we ended our conversation on a semi-good note, though I apologize for not telling him sooner because I do feel bad that it meant so much to him even now, but I don't regret it. Back then, it made him so happy during a rough time, and I don't regret giving him that joy. I just didn't realize how much it still meant to him. So I'm just wondering, am or was I the Picklefoot?
Also a complicated one, but much more lighthearted in terms of the subtext. So this is one of those things that I find very interesting about like families and relationships, and when it comes to like it being a lie or a white lie, but it is for good, quote unquote.
Yeah.
It's so I feel somewhat that this is relevant, but when I grew up, we didn't believe in Santa Claus.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is why I'm going to preface this by saying that. As I have grown up and become an adult and like talked to a lot of different people with kids and things like that, a lot of them who did not learn organically as they grew up that Santa Claus wasn't real, those that had that reality shattered for them, that Santa Claus not being real, a lot of the ones that I've met, so I don't know about everyone, but a lot of ones that I've met talked about how much it destroyed their trust in their parents.
Yep.
Like if they could lie about Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy, what else were they lying to them about? So I'm a very big proponent of we shouldn't be lying to kids.
That's fair.
About things.
That's fair, yeah.
Because it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's just going to snowball into bigger issues. And I know that he was doing it for like a moment to try and be uplifting. But what happened was, in the proof of the situation, is like this 6-year-old convinced himself that this whole story happened where he met Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah.
Which is wild, because it's that's more of like that's just insane of how your brain can start trying to fill in gaps of memories that aren't really there.
Absolutely.
Not a psychology expert, but I've heard stories, and it definitely happens. So what I am going to say very lightly,
okay,
he has a pickle foot, because this whole thing started on a lie. And it could have very quickly been fixed with like, well, I know you were really looking forward to meeting Daniel Radcliffe, and I know it's not the same thing, but I created this photo and it's almost like you're there getting to meet him.
Yeah.
And as a 6-year-old, you'd be like, oh, that's frustrating. But they're like, oh, but that's also really cool that you can do that. Who else can you have me meeting in Photoshop? And then it's an opportunity to grow that relationship that way.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I understand the continuing the lie because you see how much it means to that person. But at the same time, once the truth comes out, as evidenced by the brother's reaction, it hurts.
Yeah.
Especially when it's a treasured memory.
Yeah.
So now that entire treasured memory is tainted, and everyone he's talked to about that, it's tainted. Yeah. Because of that. So again, not a heavy pickle foot.
Yeah.
But definitely still a pickle foot.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it is. I think often we underestimate how much kids can actually understand even at a younger age. Absolutely. We think that, there's a lot of complicated issues and problems. He had to understand that his grandfather passed away. That's already a complicated thing that he's trying to kind of comprehend in that way. So I think, yes, in that way, it's a very soft, probably not the best thing to do. You could have just been honest with him. And I understand that you were young as well. He was, how old was he in this one? He was 16.
So about a 10-year age gap.
Yeah. So you probably did it thinking that it was the best idea. Probably, made a slightly, I won't say poor decision, but it was for a good reason. Yeah. It just eventually snowballed into something that you really didn't want. And so I think, yes, great intentions. Absolutely. But I think it would have been okay. Like you said, just explain to him what this is. Let him know. And then maybe he wants to go over, if he wants to lie to people and say, yeah, I met Daniel Radcliffe, and show them the Photoshop photo, that's fine. But allow him to make that choice of it. Even at 6 years old, when my little brother was 6, I think he would have been able to understand that and been okay with it. And like you said, probably would have wanted me to go over and Photoshop him into other photos with different
people. Can I meet
Tobey
Maguire, or can I meet... No. Is it Tobey Maguire who was Spider-Man?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah,
okay, yeah. Can I meet Tobey Maguire? Can I meet all these other superheroes? Can I meet that? Like, you can do so much. And it could have been kind of like we talked about in a previous episode about an opportunity to grow the relationship organically. It then became a situation of, now we have created this lie that we have to perpetuate over and over and over again.
What I also liked about this story is that this brother has basically created a history for his younger brother. He completely believed his older brother on that. Yeah. It took me a while to understand this. And as I started growing older and realizing it, I'm like, your parents are very important. Your parents do a lot for, making sure that you grow into the person you are. It might be a little bit different for homeschooled kids, but I think for all siblings that are out there, since you are around your siblings for more time than you're around really anyone else out there, even your parents, your siblings truly craft who you are in a very, very real way.
Absolutely.
Even to this point, like you're seeing, he crafted entire memory basically for his little brother that he didn't know was fake until he turned 20, and only because he told him.
Yeah.
And so when you're thinking about those kinds of things, like if you're still younger or living with your siblings or even older and around your siblings, you're very important to them as an older sibling or a younger sibling to how they realize and see the world.
Yeah.
And so while it's great to be able to be that influential to your siblings, it's also you should kind of be careful, because while you can do really great things like, supporting them and helping them feel more confident about stuff, you can also kind of be detrimental to their upbringing.
Yeah. And I mean, it actually kind of makes me think about something that I heard someone say the other day, and I think it's so true. If like we can get kids to believe that Santa Claus is real, if like kids believe us when we say Santa Claus is real, kids believe us when we say the Tooth Fairy is real, all these other fictional characters that are real, kids also are going to believe you if you tell them you're proud of them. Or kids are going to believe you if you uplift them. But in the same instance, kids will believe you if you tear them down.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so important in my mind. That's one of the reasons I love working with kids, is because I have the opportunity to help them develop a positive self-image of themselves. I grew up and I had a relatively decent opportunity with that until I kind of hit high school and was more hanging out with like kids my age at youth and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's so important that we're positively uplifting kids, and we are being very intentional with being honest and using the correct words and being smart with what we say, because we will remember it as kids.
Yeah. And if you mess up, also just apologizing as soon as you realize it. Like, you're like, oh, he's really taking this to be real. Being like, hey, little bro, I'm so sorry. I didn't want you to believe in this way, or maybe I did, but like, this was a lie. I'm so sorry. As soon as you possibly can, before it kind of snowballs into that, just being honest with that. Because we all mess up. We're not perfect.
The amount of people who... I love it. It's so wild to me, because the amount of kids that are baffled when I apologize for making a mistake is wild.
Because adults don't apologize.
Adults can't make mistakes. No, adults do make mistakes constantly. We are just kids who got older. We don't have it all figured out.
I'm going to go into a comment over here. They actually have a different... The subreddit says that they're not the Picklefoot.
I can see that. I can totally see that. Again, very soft Picklefoot.
Very soft Picklefoot on there. The top comment, or one of the top comments goes, not the Picklefoot. It's like Santa. You did it with good intentions, and he never met him. He was 6. Now he's 20. Maybe disappointing, but he's 20 years old. It would be worse to continue the fantasy for an adult. I am sure no one ever thought at the time it would be the result 14 years later. Sounds like he just never got the memo it wasn't real. Much worse things that can happen as an adult.
Absolutely. And I agree with that concept completely. Like, again, bringing up Santa, it's like I have a very different opinion about Santa, which even me and my wife are kind of in disagreement about. Like, we're not sure when we have kids if we're going to do the Santa thing or not.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm, again, kind of that mentality of like...
Schrodinger's Santa.
Schrodinger's Santa.
Sorry.
No, that's great. But no, it's the reality of like, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with creating this fairy tale for kids. I think fairy tales are important, but they're there to serve lessons, right? The story of Santa is all about generosity and like being able to give gift to other people and be able to spread good throughout the world. And I think that's a good message. And I think presenting it from that way of like, well, he isn't a real person. He was based off someone named St. Nicholas, and like going into the history of who he is great. But it's an issue when you're like, no, Santa came down your chimney and gave you this present. It's like, no, you're opening up the problem of them being like, okay, well, you also told me that you love me. Yeah. Do you mean that? Because Santa wasn't real. So this thing that's really fantastical, is that also real? And like it opens doorways, and so that's like doorways. Where like they're saying is like, oh, well, it's just like Santa not being real. Like yes, exactly though. Like there are people, because Santa not being real, you learn very quickly as you get older about physics and understanding. Like he literally could not visit everyone in one night. That's impossible. Yeah. But the reality of you met Daniel Radcliffe when you were 6, that could have happened. Like that is a feasible thing that could have occurred. Yeah. And especially when you don't correct someone who starts crafting a narrative about it. So like, that's how I kind of feel about it.
Yeah, I feel that. I like that.
My my sheltered sage opinion on that regard.
I like that. I like that a lot. Do you have another story for me?
Oh, absolutely. I've got more stories.
I've got stories here, but like, yeah.
Okay, let's see. All right. This one's going to be a little bit, I don't want to say on the longer side, but there's a lot to get through. So I'll try and get through it as much as I can.
Oh, and before you start that too.
Absolutely.
We have much more stories than we actually go into here. So if at any point you guys are like, I would love to hear more about like siblings, family, Dungeons and Dragons or something like that.
Let us know.
Please let us know in the comments. We are happy to continue talking about more. Just let us know what you want to hear.
Absolutely. I already have ideas coming up for like behind the scenes stuff, or like where we might be like diving into episodes or things that we didn't get into, or we might just do a whole like missed connections episode where we just like read the stories that we weren't able to get to in the main episodes. So that could be fun.
It'll happen.
Yeah. Am I the picklefoot for telling my brother I don't want other people to know he is my brother in high school? So the funny thing is, it's gonna be one of those, because I'm just like, that's such a high schooler thing.
It absolutely is.
All right. Hi, I am 17 female, and I have a brother that is 12, and we will be going to the same high school soon. The other day, I told him I don't want people to know we're siblings. My brother's an iPad kid who always plays mobile games like Roblox. He also plays on his laptop, watches YouTube, and other activities. However, he does this excessively. He will play games the whole day, and I mean 5 to 8 hours a day. This has been happening for at least 3 years now. My parents have tried everything they can to stop my brother from literally being addicted to games. They have scolded him, taken his devices away, and even severely shouted at him. But nothing works. He ignores everything my parents say. And when my parents take the devices away, he either takes them back or annoys them during their work hours. They both work from home until they give him the devices back. That's just bad parenting.
Yeah, all right. It's a little complicated.
And that's a whole other episode.
Yeah.
Furthermore, he has a severe case of spoiled brat attitude. I'm sorry, that's something a sister would say. And since he is entering puberty, he has a stuck-up, nobody cares about me, and you guys are all against me attitude around all of us. Additionally, my brother has horrible grades, and with the current trajectory he is going, he'll be failing all of his classes or getting C's and D's. Worst of all, he has nothing else in his life. No sports, no hobbies, no passions, no social skills, literally nothing. Since he is entering the same school I am, I do not want to be associated with him at all. In my current high school, all the teachers like me, I have good leadership positions, and my GPA is decently high. However, once he enters, I feel like he'll be horrible in his classes. Although he won't directly insult the teachers, he probably won't do his homework, fail most of his tests, and the teachers are strict. He is the type to purposely hand in a blank test paper because he doesn't like them. Worst case, if he really doesn't like the teacher, he will talk back at them and give them the look that ticks all teachers off. I worry that if it's known I'm his sister, I'll be obligated to help him, especially if my teacher makes comments about it. Furthermore, if he does become rude to the teachers, they will have a subconscious negative perception of me, which in some cases hurts my recommendation letters and my grades. If my brother becomes infamously rude or annoying, I feel like my friends will always mention it like, oh, hey, why is your brother Steve so unlike you? Or, hey, did you hear what your brother did today? And I will suddenly be responsible for cleaning up my brother's every actions and its consequences. I don't want my brother's reputation to stain what I have built for 4 years. I guess I'm selfishly asking him not to be associated with me because he is, in my eyes, an embarrassment both to society and to my family.
Ouch.
Yeah. In my heart, he is still my brother, but I see him as a lost cause that isn't willing to help himself, and I don't want to be pressured to helping him. Would I be the picklefoot if I chose not to associate with him in high school? Doesn't this just sound like a 17-year-old
yes,
though?
It is absolute sibling type thing. Okay, I want to preface this by saying, even though we were all homeschooled together and we didn't have to go into society separately as often, I was blessed with siblings that were cool.
Yeah.
So like for the most part, I didn't have to worry about them going out in society and embarrassing me because like they all do really cool things. They were all pretty talented and stuff like that. That said, if I did have a sibling that was not cool, like she's talking about there. At that age, I'm gonna say, yeah, I wouldn't be as like keen for them to know that it's my sibling. Okay, so I'm gonna break this down. While it is kind of selfish, right, to go in and say, I don't want them to know that this is my sibling because I have a good reputation at school. Coming from a person that did not go to a public school or have to deal with those kinds of things, I can imagine, though, as you craft this perfect persona, and from what I've seen on TV shows and for what I've spoken to my wife about as well, high school is a very complicated minefield of social complications and situational awareness that you have to be able to navigate properly. So it's already difficult as a human being to get through there. From what I've also seen in those TV shows, Disney Channel and Nickelodeon, being a woman in those social contexts already has another layer of complexity to it.
I've seen Mean Girls. I know how high school works.
Exactly. I've also seen Mean Girls. High school, it's very, very complicated in that way. But then having a brother that isn't cool, that is going to complicate things. I'm sorry to this woman. It's kind of like that a meme that's there. I'm sorry to this man. I don't know this man. I am sorry to this man, Kiki Palmer, that is there, because I get it. You don't want to be associated with that, because even if you love your brother and you care about him as a person, you're like, I'm already doing so much at school. I just want to be able to focus on my school, my grades, my friends. And when I get home, I can deal with this complication, which she calls a lost cause of a brother in that situation. Now, I'm making kind of fun of it because I think it's funny the way that she kind of goes in on this kid.
She goes ham on him. Oh.
But also, I have had situations with my siblings. They are wonderful. They are fantastic. But there were certain situations where I was like, I don't know, this kid's going to get better. This is pretty rough.
You called your siblings, or you felt your siblings were lost causes?
I won't say they were lost cause. It was just at a certain point, I'm like, this is difficult. I'm like, we need to fix this, but I don't know. So I feel you. I'm not going to say you're a pickle foot because I've been there.
Yeah.
That said, maybe not the best way to put it.
So that's my big thing about this. So I come from a very different perspective. So we were all homeschooled, but I had my older brother that I talked about earlier. I love him, and I cared about him a lot. That boy did not know how to operate in social circles. I'm
so sorry.
The amount of times he professed his love to a girl that he had only known for a couple months.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, I love that boy. But
no.
Yes. So we're not supposed to speak ill of the dearly departed, but not going to speak ill. But just not the most keenly social aware. And there might have been some other things that we don't know going on with his headspace and things like that. But there were a lot of times when I was younger that I felt like I had to fix it. I had to parent it because I was the person that was there, and I had to direct him. Or there were moments where I used to grab, if we were in the same room together and he said something stupid, or that I felt was stupid, I would grab his leg and squeeze it. I'm like, dude, what the heck? What are you saying? You can't say that. That's not appropriate.
Yeah.
And so it was just I feel that, even though it was funny because I'm the younger sibling and kind of was trying to navigate that. So first thing I'll say to this girl is that you're not responsible for your sibling. And this is something that you learn as you get older and older. However, one thing that I will say as a mark against her is her perception of her brother.
Yeah.
Because the way she talks about him, she talks like she hates him.
Yeah.
And that's the thing where I'm just this isn't anything about your social standing, your grades, your things like that. You do not like him and are not wanting to be associated with him purely because you don't like him.
Yep.
And so it comes from a place of selfishness. She's trying to make it very selfless, and she's 17. We all were really melodramatic when we were that age. But at the same time, if this came from a place of just I love my brother and I care about him, but also like, you know, those things. Maybe I could get more in like, not the pickle foot her.
Yeah.
But again, as a 17-year-old, I won't pickle foot her hard, but it is like, you're being really mean to your younger brother.
Yeah, that's
and
fair.
Like, it's very clear that there is more going on to this relationship. And speaking of that, there are edits.
Oh.
Yes.
What do you got in the edits?
So there are actually 3 edits.
Oh my gosh. Let's go.
So the first edit is also kind of an update. So a lot of people do call her the Picklefoot, by the way.
Oh.
Yes. The designation is she is the Picklefoot.
Okay. That's fair.
I see a lot of comments saying that I am the Picklefoot, and it's quite a reality check. I appreciate it. I wrote this in a fit of rage because my parents got into an argument again over my brother and I also got shouted at, so I was just really mad at him, and I felt the need to blow off some steam. I think I should clarify some things. I just don't want to be around him in high school, but I won't bully him. I want to help him, and I've tried in the past, but it never worked out. My parents work a lot of overtime, so they sometimes don't have the time or energy to help my brother, and I'm guessing they're basing off how I came out, so they expect my brother to be more responsible. I know a lot of issues for my brother is more complex, and I don't want to expose that in a Reddit post since that's more for therapists, but I suppose more of my main problem is that I don't want him to keep acting like this, but he isn't willing to change no matter what method we've tried. And it isn't just affecting him, but it's also affecting how our family functions, because now a lot of times my parents argue a lot, and I also get entangled into it. So I'm hoping that people on Reddit will help with that, because I really don't know what to do. So it's like, now that we've delved into it deeper, there's clearly more issues going on in this family.
Yeah.
So the thing that I taking as I step back and I read this, the parents need to get that kid into therapy.
Yep.
The son. And they might themselves need to go into therapy, because I think they're struggling on having the proper tools to be able to navigate this.
Yeah.
I think they're struggling because from the way this reader sounds, and again, it's their own perception of how they're doing and things like that. But it sounds like this kid was the golden child.
Yes.
And then the younger brother came along and just can't get it right.
Yep.
And so I'm wondering if like it's those people that are like, this is the baby that tricked me into having another baby because they were so well behaved, and then this one is a nightmare kind of
Which
thing.
Which is
that
problematic in its own sense.
Yes, absolutely. So it's one of those things that I'm just like, okay, so you need to figure out how to do this without screaming and yelling at your kids. Because the sister is now seeing it as her responsibility to fix her brother, and it's not her responsibility, which is what I was saying earlier.
My little brother is incredibly intelligent, super, super smart. We don't always agree on everything. And if you ask any of my family members, they would say we probably don't agree on a lot. It's the funny part because we do agree on most things, I would say. It's for the small things that we don't agree on. He has very strong opinions on them. And sometimes I'll even say I have very strong opinions on them as well. And so we can get in some very lively discussions about it.
Yeah.
In that same way, it's like when we're working through those situations, we have, from our family and other situations like that, we were taught that, especially outside, like social situations, things like that, when we're with other people, we work as a unit. So like I support my siblings. I try to make sure that they're okay regardless. That can sometimes be toxic because then you feel like if your sibling is going through something, like you were saying before, if they say something wrong or they say something weird, you're like, I have to support.
It's my responsibility now.
Yep. And even sometimes I will see that my parents sometimes were like, you're responsible for your siblings. You got to make sure that they're okay in that situation. At a certain point, yes, as an older sibling or even a younger sibling or siblings in general, you should support your siblings as much as you possibly can. But also you're a kid.
Yeah.
And I think people forget about that sometimes, especially when you're just used to them working together, especially like if you're the golden kid. I hear so many stories of like people who are like, oh, I was a fantastic kid. I always got straight A's, but my parents expected so much of me. And even the parents didn't realize how much they expected of their kid until later on when all of the children leave the nest and went out and they're like, wow, I kind of expected you to raise your siblings along with yourself in that's not their job.
Yeah.
And so with the sister, like you're saying, it's not her job to raise her little brother, but it feels like she feels responsible for what he's doing. I think it's good for the parents to kind of have that discussion and be like, I understand if you don't agree with what your brother is doing. The parents obviously don't agree with what the brother is doing.
Absolutely.
But it's like, it's not your responsibility if something happens. Support her in that situation of what's going on. And then also, like you said, try to get the little brother some help so that he can feel loved and appreciated. And maybe it's as much as going over and saying, yes, your sister is different than you, but we love you both the same, because he might be just acting out because he feels like the sister gets all the support and he gets nothing. Yeah.
So I definitely think one of the things that's really interesting is it sounds like he is heavy into escapism, which is one of the things that kids who are addicted to video games are, as coming from someone who played a lot of video games growing up.
Yeah.
It sounds like this home environment might not be the most healthiest. And like, I know we all have our own issues, but it sounds like the parents yell a lot. And if the parents are always home, that's a recipe for disaster, because it's that separation of work, home, things like that. It's not a cohesive environment.
Yeah.
Obviously, I can't speak to it directly because I don't have kids and I don't have that environment, but I know it's important that kids feel seen, that kids feel heard, and that I can speak from being someone who helps educate, helps teach, things like that.
Yeah.
So it is incredibly important that they do get to the root cause of, why are you playing video games so often? Why are you? Because that's going to develop into a bigger problem when we get to 18 and we have to start developing a job.
Yeah.
As much as I'm very supportive of people being streamers and like content creators and things like that, you don't get to easily just start that way.
Yeah.
Like even with us, we are both in our late 20s trying, like we're now getting into a podcast.
Yeah.
It's like we have jobs and we have established, and we're doing this as a creative side project.
Yeah.
You don't get to start doing what you do for fun as a job.
Yeah, and it's also, it seems like he has addictive tendencies.
Yes, and that is something that parents need to help iron out now. So she goes into a little bit more thoughts. I'm not going to read the second edit, but she does have a very big third edit that I do want to get into, and then I think we'll be done, because I don't want to get too much into the comments, because the comments kind of rip her apart, and I don't think that's fair, because she's 17.
Yeah.
But the
siblings are
comments are rough.
complicated.
Siblings are complicated. Edit number 3. I've been reading the comments for an hour and 2, and I've also been replying to some. It's getting quite late, and I don't want to stay up too late. So yeah, I'll just say some last thoughts. I'll try talking to my parents about just letting me take the devices. It's summer right now, so there isn't homework, but I'll try to help my brother with homework. But I hope he can gain some new friends that will study with him instead of having me. I actually never said I don't want other people to know you're my brother, but because Am I the A-hole doesn't allow non-action things, so I made it so I did. When I wanted to see the general opinion of my potential future actions, I realized that, yeah, I'm a pretty big picklefoot of a sister, and I'll try to change by following some of the advice on Reddit. But I think that the situation is too complicated for people on Reddit to really understand, and there are too many details that can't really be written on a Reddit post.
Yeah.
So I might ask some of my friends, because they understand my family situation a bit better, or a therapist. I think there's a lot of serious underlying issues with my family, and I acknowledge that. I understand some of the things my brother is going through, because I also went through that. After all, we live in the same household. I guess that also makes me more of a picklefoot, knowing what he's going through but not helping. That's actually some pretty big introspection for a 17-year-old.
That's great.
I always thought the methods my parent used will be helpful to him, since it was useful against me, but I think Reddit gave me a new perception on that. I also never really thought about being 12 is that young, but the comments allowed more insight into that, which is very true. 12 is such a young age. I'll try my best to be a better sister from now on. Our relationship isn't negative per se, it's just stagnant, kind of like roommates with occasional fights, but I'll try to talk to him about life in general more often. Thanks for the comments. Some of them were mean, some were bullying or brutally honest, and some were both. But I think that helped me a bit on at least what my next step should be. I'm also the type to delete Reddit accounts in a day or two, so this post will likely be gone soon, but thanks for the advice. They weren't gone. It stayed. But she did delete her account, though.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's complicated. Siblings are tricky, especially when you don't completely agree with what they're doing or how they're doing it. And I appreciate, I'm very proud of my siblings, and I love them all. We had many discussions even after we grew older about how we grew up, the things that we did to each other, the things that we all experienced, because it's complicated. You don't really realize too, like with her having to have those discussions with her siblings, we all grew up together.
Yeah.
Like he's 12 he's still a kid. She's 17. She's relatively still a kid as well.
Yeah.
And so it's like you're learning how to deal with people and complicated situations, potentially addiction and other stuff as a child. You're not going to do it perfectly.
No.
And like you said, therapy helps, especially when you start realizing that these are some big feelings and emotions that really need to be worked through.
Yeah.
But I think with the right support, professional support, probably, it can get better. And I think that she really realized a good bit about herself. She shouldn't have to realize it in this way.
Yeah.
But she realized a lot.
And I think one of the things that's really good is she is learning how to receive feedback.
Yeah.
And also recognizing the limits of what a internet post can provide. Because it's like she very quickly realizes like, oh, you don't understand the full context, and I can't give you the full context with this limited forum that I have. So I think it is really good. Like, she has a lot of potential, I think, because it is very hard for 17-year-olds, for kids in general, nay, everyone, to receive feedback.
Yes.
Receiving feedback of any kind is hard, but especially for kids and teenagers, I think, because they're trying to become their own person. I remember when I was a teenager and I was the same way. I was like, I wanted to be my own person and be responsible for myself and like have a good reputation and all that other kind of stuff. And it was just like, I didn't want to hear when people are giving me good advice.
Yeah.
And so I think she's going to be okay. I think she's going to figure it out. I think that whole family dynamic probably could use some family therapy, honestly, because it sounds like, again, there's definitely some coping skills that the parents need to learn to be able to manage their lives and be able to parent a little bit better and be able to be more open to what their kids are going through. Because it sounds like she's the only one who really understands all that, like both sides of it.
Yep.
And I bet the parents are just being like, oh, well, he's being disobedient if like blah, 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 blah. And it's like, that doesn't work for everyone. You can't, every child is different. And if you try and treat the same child or the same sibling as you would another sibling, it's not going to work every time. And so, like, same thing that you were saying about your siblings. My siblings, I didn't always have the great relationship that I had. I actually didn't have a really good relationship with the youngest brother until we got a lot older. And then me and my sister had a really good relationship and then had a big falling out when we both were late teenagers because of a lot of mental health issues. We're all much better now. We've all hit the other side of it, but it's also that same mentality of there had to be forgiveness on both sides. I had to go and extend that olive branch and be like, hey, I know I'm still hurting about some of the things that were said, but I also recognize that you had the potential to grow and you have clearly grown from that. And I'm sorry for the actions that I have done. And it wasn't fast. It was very much just like we started hanging out. We go to like grab a bite to eat or something like that. We weren't instantly coming over to each other's houses and talking for hours and hours and hours.
Yep.
But it was something where we were able to like slowly rebuild that connection. And it sounds like that's what she needs to do with her brother.
Absolutely. And for my siblings as well, it was a fun experience when we switched from just living in the same house and kind of, in a way, being forced to be around each other. To after moving out, realizing that we still do enjoy being around each other and we wanted to talk. And so then making the active choice to talk to each other. We have like FaceTime calls that we do every once in a while.
That's awesome.
Or we'll go over and visit each other. And it's like weird because you're taught by social situations and TV and stuff like that you're not really supposed to like your siblings, right? They're supposed to be weird. They're supposed to be uncool. Like this is the situation, the story that we had there, or even all the stories. Like they're supposed to be different people that you don't really want to be around. But when you are appreciative of them and stuff, you're like, I want to be around them. I want to get to know them better. But it also helps you to understand that they are their own people in their own right.
Yes.
They have their own stories. Even if you grew up with them and you really never left their side because of homeschool situations, they are still different. And when they get out there, you're like, oh, you got your whole life out there.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely
great.
Is that our last story?
I mean, yeah, I think that's our last one for right now.
So for those of you who, and I think it's just from the first story, if those are you who are listening and maybe you don't have the best relationship with your siblings, things like that, just thinking about the first story is being willing to have that conversation, be willing to open back up and try. Now, that being said, I do agree with what you said, though, about just because they're your family doesn't mean you have to be around them all the time.
That's correct.
So set appropriate boundaries, make sure that you are not being hurt by your siblings or your family, and, you know, do what you can to reconnect with the people who are trying to be good influence in your life.
Yeah, they don't take them for granted either, for either way or one way or the other. Family is important. Like we had that other story. They can manipulate the entire history of what you remember by accident or on purpose for good reasons or for bad. So if you are still in the same location as your siblings or around them as a younger person or even as an older person, you know, try to love them as you can if it is not a toxic situation where you can go into, and appreciate those times you have there.
Yeah. And I feel like I would be not a good person if I didn't also say this just from my own personal experience, and not to end on a dour note either, but recognize that you don't know how much time you have left with your siblings. Things happen. Like loss can happen at any moment, and if a relationship is important to you, there's a verse, don't put off tomorrow what you can. Is that a verse or a saying?
I think it's a verse.
Yeah, there's a verse in the Bible that talks about don't put off tomorrow what you can do today. And you never know what opportunities are going to be available to you, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. And so it is always a beneficial aspect to try, and if it's something that's been heavy on you, let me be the person to encourage you, go reconnect with that person, because you never know what's going to happen.
Actually, it's a Benjamin Franklin.
Is that
quote.
Benjamin Franklin?
That's Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, my mom would be so disappointed in me.
Well, then, no, it's also a proverb. It's from Proverbs 24:33-34. If you put off until tomorrow the work you could do today, tomorrow never seems to come.
Yes.
So, yes, that's it.
So that being said, appreciate your siblings. But as we learned in the first story, I think setting appropriate boundaries is also important too.
Absolutely.
Don't let siblings walk all over you.
Yeah.
Be the mature person that you have to be. But yeah.
So thank you for joining us on this episode.
Absolutely. A little bit heavier than I think I wanted to go.
But I think it's important for us to talk about those heavy things. You can't always have like the daisies and roses, the easy kind of stories that are there.
the fun T&D stories and, workplace.
With that as well, if you want to connect with us more outside of just listening to us on this podcast or watching us on here, we have socials, don't we?
Yes, we do. So you can follow us on YouTube by just continuing to watch and hitting that subscribe button. There's a little bell next to it that if you click it, you'll get all of our updates of when we have new videos dropping.
Please do that.
You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, things like that. If you watch us on Spotify or any of those other podcasting apps, you can add to where it automatically downloads, or you're notified as soon as new episodes are released.
Yep.
You can also leave us ratings on there and comments. I learned this, I think we talked about it last week, but you can leave comments on Spotify podcast episodes, so we will be reading those. I obsessively watch over these things because I don't have a healthy relationship with the internet, as evidenced by my constant obsession. But that being said, we're also, if you have any stories of your own that you want to share with us, we actually have a email that we're going to link in the description below as well, in the Spotify or the podcast as well as in YouTube. You can reach us at shelteredsages@gmail.com. And if you want to, even if you have your own story that you want us to react to on the podcast, you can write it in and put the title as a listener write-in and give us the information. I can't guarantee that we're going to read it on the air. It's obviously we are going to do, appropriate checks and things like that to make sure it's something that I'm comfortable talking about. But I will read it regardless. And if it's something that I don't feel comfortable reading on a podcast, I might just respond to you in the email, or me and Philip will respond to you.
So try to keep it family friendly if you're sending something in or something like that. But we would love to hear your stories of who's the picklefoot. If you want us to judge you on that way or judge someone else's situation, please do send in. We would love to hear more about it. Just see what you're feeling about those situations. See if you agree with us. Or if you're like, I don't agree with that. And then send us a comment afterwards and be like, that was wrong.
And that's how we start losing viewers, because people are going to be like, oh, they're so mean to your listeners.
But please send it in, lighter, darker, whatever. Just try to make it family friendly. We will read all of them.
Yeah,
right?
I will at least look at as many as I can. I hope we don't get flooded with things that like I'm overwhelmed and can't read it.
Send us them.
That would be a great problem to have. Still send it in.
Send it in and then keep listening to see if your story is chosen.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I think that is all for today. So we will find you and you can hear more of our sage wisdom next week.
All right. We'll see you.
Bye.